Hello everyone and welcome to the first ride overview video, which is a rebranding of the 5 useful coaster series, where I also talk a bit about the coaster in general. In this episode we are going to talk about the Steel Wild Mouse as requested by Cat0x. First I will talk a bit about the coaster in general, then I will discuss the special elements it has available, after that I will discuss the stat requirements it has, and I will finish off by showing some designs. The Steel Wild Mouse is a small coaster type and is capable of very tight turns and sudden drops. They are generally quite short and don't go very fast. Because the trains only consist of a single car, they lose speed very quickly. The greatest advantage is that they are very cheap compared to most other coaster types, while the greatest disadvantage is their low throughput. The Steel Wild Mouse doesn't have any special elements apart from the station, brakes and block brakes, but it does have 2 track pieces available that not a lot of other coasters have, namely the small level to steep and steep to level pieces and the very tight turns. These allow for very compact designs. The Steel Wild Mouse has 5 different stat requirements. It needs at least 1 drop that is at least 4.5 meters tall, it needs at least 2 drops, it needs to have a top speed of at least 25 km per hour, it needs a length of at least 170 meters, and it needs to have at least 1.50 lateral g-forces. If it fails to meet any of these requirements, all of its stats will be divided by 2. The full list of all stat requirements is in the description below. Now it's time to look at some efficient designs. The first design is the cheapest one, as always. It's very cheap at 1164 euros, but it's not the most compact. This design is purely for attracting the most guests for your money. You can see that it barely makes all the requirements, which is exactly what this coaster was designed to do. The next coaster is actually not my design, but it's too good to not show it. This was made by a 4chan user a long time ago. It's a 4x4 ultra compact design with decent stats. It's not as cheap as the previous design, but it's still very cheap and probably the better option. It can also run a lot of cars, making it good at getting guests off the path. The third design is something that a Wild Mouse is particularly good at, and that is fitting in very tight spaces. This design is only 2 tiles wide, including the entrance and exit. This specific design might not be useful very often, but it does show off a great quality of a Wild Mouse coaster, which is fitting in spaces where no other coaster fits, while also getting quite high stats. A useful thing to do with short Wild Mouse coasters with a lot of cars on the station, like this one, is to lower the minimum waiting time, otherwise when a car returns to the station there will still be several cars waiting to depart, making it far less efficient. The fourth and last design is the big coaster. It might not be that big, but for a Wild Mouse it is quite big. It has a high excitement rating for the cost, which is only about 5,000 euros. This design is also just over 600 meters long, making it useful for the harder guest generation scenarios. This coaster is useful if you want to make a lot of money per guest for very little investment, but the downside is that it, like all other Wild Mouse coasters, has low throughput. That was it for this episode. In conclusion, the Wild Mouse coaster is a useful coaster type that can get high stats for little money and can fit in small spaces, which comes at the cost of a low throughput. Let me know if you like this new format and leave suggestions for upcoming videos in the comment section below. Thanks for watching and I will see you in the next video.